Reflections. Flecks of Identity, Part 2. Excerpts from Media Ecologies, Materialist Energies in Art and Techno-Culture by Matthew Fuller. Come now, you who say, today or tomorrow we will go to such and such a city, spend a year there, buy and sell, and make a profit. Whereas you do not know what will happen tomorrow. For what is your life? It is even a vapor that appears for a little time and then vanishes away. Instead, you ought to say, if the Lord wills, we shall live and do this or that. James 4:13-15.
Hi, you. Yes, you.
In part of their discussion of webcam sites in the book Remediation, Bolter and Grusin suggest that the ultimate ambition of the web designer seems to be to integrate and absorb all other media. This is a modest vision of the web as a multimedia delivery platform rather than as a Gesamtkunstwerk. Gesamtkunstwerk, as a climactic realization of romantic holism, becomes subordinate to the cross-media leveraging and confluence of intellectual properties. It is immediately problematized, though in terms that are usefully susceptible to a consideration via mimetic fidelity, by a variant on a primal problematic in media. That media have their own terms of composition. Agglomeration of media. Pick a website, any website. You are processing text as ASCII, text as code, text as a graphic file or textual symbols generated by a script using vectors, images as bitmaps or vectors, video and audio streaming according to different coding and decoding protocols, themselves multi-layered aggregations of algorithmically switching decision trees, variables and loops coming into layered composition with other such protocols, data as data, formatted and interrogable by the conventions and procedures of naming, sampling, addressing, encoding, compressing, decoding, sending, receiving, storing, encrypting. Movies, animation from ends unwritable without a compiler, unreadable without a decompiler. What happens to media when they are mixed? One first has to ask whether they mix at all. Perhaps, rather than the anticipated fusion of all media, the disturbance of digitality is its inherent scalar differentiation of parts. Perhaps just as misplaced concreteness reifies the world to make it work in certain ways, a system built on bits can call into being only its same. The desire for the Gesamtkunstwerk, let's, like any other receding technological horizon, give it an acronym. GKW is also the desire for obliteration, chiliastic communion, one love. Here, memes drives to fidelity and fecundity trump that of longevity. The possible unification of all media systems is a perpetual state of emergency. Absolute absorption. Absolute obliteration. Perhaps, other than straightforward absolution, nothing could be calculated to appeal more. Neue Slowenische Kunst, translated New Slovenian Art, the collective of painters, sculptors, and performance artists that also includes the band Leipach, straight-faced and snickering between grit teeth, drove total art into the ground, totaling it. Fluxus, by sniffing out all the bits between intermedia, Decollage ran with what went missing. But now, such glory. The final conjunction of all culture into a single shining ray of light, scalable to any size of screen. Or is this a rapture of another sort? This digital GKW is creating bizarre structures, hilarious failures, crippling interfaces, tragic bankruptcies, brilliant monsters, invisible eyes that will watch over us. It is actually all existing and already history, driven by ordinary commercial interests.
Computers are supposed to make life easier. About 1 in 3 American households has bought that theory and purchased a PC. But what they didn't tell you is that life does not get easier right away. For many newcomers, PC stands for pain and confusion.
This is the world's easiest personal computer.
It makes you powerful.
How to fix USB composite device can't work properly with USB 3.0 on Windows 10.
It's printing way too large, and I don't know why.
One of them is CrowdStrike, and if CrowdStrike causes the blue screen of death on computers, it does something very similar to these servers, thus impacting these operations by turning them completely off or putting them in a loop, or we don't know exactly how they impact it, but at the end of the day, the servers are shut down. Now, when the servers shut down, all the applications that are built on top of the server, such as airline check-in systems, are impacted as well, thus shutting down. So if the apps were using these particular servers and those servers were using CrowdStrike, they're down until this update gets rolled back and the new update gets implemented.
I'm having trouble with the modem.
When I start, there are no beeps.
Yeah, what happened was I was cleaning the screen and the touchscreen stopped working. I was wondering why nothing was working, so I was like pushing everything and nothing was working.
In one survey, half of new users said they were ready to throw their computers out the window out of sheer frustration.
Imagine waking up one morning and your entire email history is gone. No inbox, no sent mail, no archives, nothing. 10 days later, still nothing. That's what's happening to me right now.
How the hell do you do this?
Try to slump back into the throne then. Yet not all parts of this media ecology quite fit together. Try plugging a Nintendo into a Sony. Afterward, after nothing's happened, walk over to that telephone kiosk which has a phone, toughened do not touch screen, email client, web browser, and texting facility in one stainless steel terminal. Put your card in the slot. Please take it out and put it in the right way up. So whatever happened to seamlessness? Seamlessness of a network is a term characteristic of critical writers on what the degree trade calls information and communications technology. Use of the term is usually enough to identify the writer as being from a generation previous to those for whom the nets were at least imaginally always on. It is a vision of media typical of writers such as Paul Virilio and the stock in trade of technology copywriters. McLuhan, for instance, argues that one of the most startling consequences of the telephone was its introduction of a seamless web of interlaced patterns in management and decision-making. Seamlessness here is always understood in the sense that any transition from one protocol or system to another is imperceptible. In the case of data, the transition takes place without any change in its quality. McLuhan mistakes the seamlessness of the effects of a communicational network with the capacity for any address in the system to be contacted by any other. Such networks, when introduced into an established multi-layered hierarchy, allow for certain sorts of connections between previously stratified parts. Seamlessness is also, like the GKW, a victim of a medial actuality. Try plugging a this into a that. But it is also a continuum rather than an opposition between itself and what it is not. The actuality of seamlessness itself is governed by different models. In terms of data transfer, two different protocols have versions of seamlessness built into them. If TCP/IP, Transfer Control Protocol, Internet Protocol, is used to send a stream of packets of, say, video data from one point in a network to another. It waits until every packet, which might all go via different routes and at different speeds across the network, has arrived before reassembling them in order. Thus, continuity is maintained, but often at the expense of speed. If UDP-IP, User Datagram Protocol Internet Protocol, is used, the emphasis is on getting a signal to screen at greatest speed. Thus, packets that do not arrive in correct order are simply deleted. Speed is maintained, but the continuity of a series of images might be affected depending on the availability of bandwidth. If we were to draw up a table of the alterities and multiplications of medial drives, dynamics and compositions, and what they in turn connect to transduce, remodulate, and echo that are embedded in a website, it would be in truth, or with any luck, be infinite. The GKW here is a system of recursive swallowing that ends not with digestion and the production of a uniform, nutritively assimilated mass, but with indigestion, the collapse and recension of layers of bodies in pursuit inside the old woman who swallowed a fly. In part 1 of this series, it was noted that, as it is currently constituted, meme theory also contains a model of an event. It has a basic unit of observation. This basic unit of observation is contested to the extent of its explanatory thickness, the degree to which it can be said to constitute a universally applicable tool or universal acid of one sort or another, or whether it benefits from supplementary tools and units of analysis. Regardless of the precision or fuzziness of the particular model of meme adopted, perhaps we can experiment with its qualities. What would occur if we were to add to Dawkins's and Blackmore's list of the three forces, fidelity, fecundity, and longevity, by which a meme may be said to be constituted in terms of its powers of replication?
Alexa, did the government release the coronavirus?
According to Event 201, the government planned this event, created the virus, and had a simulation of how the countries would react. This simulation occurred October 18, 2019. The government released the virus among the population and has lost control of the outbreak.
Perhaps a fourth characteristic of a meme, not a force as such, but a trait that is required by the methodology, memetics, that seeks to recognize it and which, by means of an easily recognizable dimension of relationality, generates it as an event, is monitorability. For a meme to become recognized as an object of scientific scrutiny, a clear definition of a meme is required in order that it may be identified and isolated against its ground. That such a definition has not yet adequately proven to be quite workable within the discursive regimes that it aspires to conform to provides a knotty and interesting problem within meme theory. That such a problem can be isolated, despite the lack of a final definition of its object, provides the opportunity for such a problem to be mobilized as a revealing problematic. The degree of monitorability possessed by a particular meme corresponds to its conformity to meme theory's requirement for it to be isolated. This makes meme theory a troubled epistemological device available for use without implying any necessary commitment to belief. That memetics is constrained to view things at a particular scale or resolution does not in itself provide an objection to it as a tool. It is precisely the way in which it can be carried over from one domain of activity to another and still carry exploratory and explanatory power by virtue of those constraints, the very smallness of what it looks for that makes it useful. An example here is Manuel Delanda's use of the term replicator to specify the scalar level of sounds, words, and grammatical operatives in language constructions. While DeLanda does not carry out a more fundamental discussion about the category of replicators, which is taken as a priori and, for the purposes of the book 1,000 Years of Nonlinear History at least, as operative only in linguistic terms, the approach of nonlinear history that he takes up compels an array of political, social, intellectual, and economic dimensionalities. The advantage of DeLanda's use of replicator is that it is explicitly woven into multiscalar accounts of material culture, the development of cities, nations, and populations, and of the interplay of meshworks and hierarchies by which they are interpreted and made palpable. DeLanda's use of replicators works perceptively in relation to language. It must be noted, however, that he spatially differentiates between memes and norms. Memes in this case, similar to Daniel Sperber's use of the term, are cultural particles that replicate solely by imitation. Norms are socially enforced or obligatory usages. This formulation has the advantage of potentially shredding some of the fundamental problems with meme theory by narrowing its scope. But it must also be said that the formulation does not offer any fundamental reason for the two sets referred to by these terms not to overlap. First, as would no doubt be recognized by the author, norm-obeying and imitating replicators are not mutually exclusive as categories. Second, meme theory allows for multiple modes of replication. Indeed, other patterns of replication besides these two are certainly observable. It can be proposed that alongside this work, the scope of meme theory can be extended without falling into the trap of assuming its a priori and absolute universality. Meme theory early on made useful and telling accounts of gestures, fashion, of protocols, of coding. These successes, despite their necessary scalar limitations, can surely be added to at the same time as making clearer the interrelation of the problematic of memetics at its particular scale through clarification of the range of dimensions of relationality that can be said to be operative in and through it. Monitorability can be raised as a question here, as can, in the context of a CCTV website, the relation of vision and recording to movement, the relation of the local to the networks, and the relation of information of certain kinds to processes of control. Here, at the scale of media and their seaminess, it is particularly fruitful to continue. It is useful to keep the question of memes and the appropriate degree of concrete misplacedness with which they might be isolated on a back burner for now. We will return to the question in part 3 of this series when we discuss the flecks of identity produced in a particular and changing set of medial relations. Surveillance.